Welcome back. 30 minutes of action and a win. How do you feel?
Not good, but I'm glad we got through it and we got the win. I just want to come back. I think we got a chance, even at the level that I'm at, and I'm only going to get better. But, this one was probably the hardest by far, especially mentally.
I mean, I think like minutes-wise, that was probably where I thought we would end up.
Normally, I would say, a couple weeks, week and a half, whatever. But it wouldn't surprise me hearing about one more game or two that he's ready to roll.
So it was a good return for the Sixers, about as good as they could have hoped for Joel Embiid. And with the game in the balance, he re-entered the game with 4:15 remaining. The 76ers, they trailed by 6 at that point. Embiid, he led the comeback with 8 points, outscoring the Thunder by himself down the stretch. So, Zach, we've waited 8 weeks to see what Joel Embiid would be. What were your first impressions here?
I wanted to see the burst. I wanted to see the closing speed on defense and the aggression, and we got a couple holy bleep moments late in the game of just that. Maybe like a more relief holy bleep, but still, this is Joel Embiid. This is Joel Embiid I want to see. He's at the lane. He's waiting. He's ready to pounce. Look at him. He's ready. He's like a sprinter in the starting block, ready to go. Lou Dort. No, now there was a charge anyway, but he was going to swat that shot into the crowd. And then later in the game, same thing. He's way up here. He's at the three-point arc. He's on somebody's back. Here he comes, Lou Dort. No shot. That's speed. That's power. This is when he's at his best. There just aren't guys this size who can close like that on defense, and he looks pretty healthy right there. Looked a little sluggish on offense, but that looked pretty damn like Joel Embiid.
He was at his best in closing time, but prior to that, if you saw Joel Embiid, he was like this. My man was tired, but the fact that he gives you 24 points when tired, and also more importantly, the things that translate, even though he's just coming back from a long break.
Right.
Free throws, those closing free throws matter. He leads the league in free throw attempts, and then also just defensive presence.
Yep.
Those change the games for Embiid overall.
And we still haven't seen the full complement of the 76ers, the new look 76ers, the additions they made at the trade deadline, plus Tyrese Maxey, who wasn't playing last night. So they could be pretty scary, and ESPN analytics give the 76ers a 41% chance to finish as the 7th seed, the highest of any team in the Eastern Conference, which means the odds are their first-round opponent would be the Milwaukee Bucks. And given
this is a made shot with a miss, and then they didn't get back.
Here's Doc Rivers.
I've made a lot of notes. I will say that. I won't share that. But we don't bring the necessary professionalism, seriousness on the road. And that's something that we can fix. That's something we're going to have to fix.
All right, so Doc is essentially questioning Milwaukee's professionalism there. Perk, what are you questioning?
Why? Why is he questioning their professionalism, and why isn't there? Like, when we look at the contending teams, we're not having this conversation about the Denver Nuggets. We're not having this conversation about the Boston Celtics, especially at this point of the season. So why are you not mentally there to go on the road and beat arguably the worst team in the NBA in a must-win situation? And I can understand if this was in December or November, but we're talking about March, heading into April, when you're in the locker room and everything on your mind should be about you and the Milwaukee Bucks and how can you get better. And the only way that they can get better is having that mentality, right? And getting back in transition defense, that comes down to having your mind in the right place. That comes down to talking on defense. That just comes into effort. And for a veteran ball club like this, it's very alarming at this point of the season that we got to be talking about effort.
Well, Doc pretty much called the team an unserious team, which is concerning.
Logan Roy.
Well done. I'm going to tell you that they should get serious because did you see that number? About 41% for the 76ers to be the 7th seed with Joel Embiid. I agree with Zach. I thought Embiid looked really good last night. For a guy 2 months off a knee surgery with more time to go before you get ready for the playoffs, I think Philly just showed some fangs last night, even though they weren't ready to go. And you watch the Bucks being called an unserious team. The last thing the Bucks want is a modicum of stress in that first round after what happened last year, and they better be watching very carefully because if it ain't the Bucks, it might be the Heat, and we know there's scar tissue there too.
Brian gets a tan and starts saying fangs. Okay, Mr. Windhorst. But Zach, I hate that I'm even asking this question. Are the Bucks at risk of yet another first-round exit?
We've been waiting all year. 2 weeks. That's all I wanted from the Bucks. 2 straight weeks, so like 6 games. 6 straight games of dominant peak Milwaukee Bucks performances. We're not going to get it. It's too late now. So they're going to go into playoffs on this roller coaster of like, oh, they look good this night. Oh, this that. And yeah, Dame was out. Cool. You're playing the Wizards. Like, just win the game. And this is the second time. You talk about unserious people. This is the second. Doc Rivers got this job yesterday in the scheme of things. This is the second time he's publicly lit into his team. The first time he said half of us were in Cancun before the All-Star break when they lost in Memphis to another team. Look, I still think this team has a really high ceiling. Their record is really good. I think they're the second best team in the East unless the Knicks get healthy and everyone else gets healthy. But they are absolutely at risk of losing in the first round to either the Sixers or the Heat. Like, that, those are going to be – I picked the Bucks right now in both those series, but they're not toss-ups. They're going to be long, hard-fought series unless Milwaukee really shapes up.
I'm not worried about that. I think they're going to get past the first round and the second round. You know why? Because the bright spot in all of this is money-making Middleton. We talk about how healthy Joel Embiid looked. Chris Middleton, since he's came back from injury, he looks extremely healthy. And we know when Damian Lillard gets back into that lineup, we know what's going to happen with Chris Middleton as that third option.
He will be out tonight as he continues to deal Damian Lillard with that groin injury.
No, I mean, but he's not going to be out indefinitely.
Sure.
Right? So he's going to be back. But again, we all were, when Chris Middleton was out, we kept saying, I didn't heard, all of us say, the Bucks are going to go as far as how good is Chris Middleton going to look? Like, is Chris Middleton going to look like the old Chris Middleton? And to be honest, he has looked like the old Chris Middleton.
But it doesn't matter who you are. If you're not addressing what Doc Rivers said is professionalism, and you just outlined it, professionalism, when you hear that, that is transition defense. That is communication. Like, there's no excuse at the profession. The hardest thing to coach is defense. You have superstars. Getting them to buy in on defense is what differentiates a good team from a championship team. And that's been their biggest issue. That's why they brought him in. Now, when it comes to this professionalism, transition defense, you have to communicate. Like, these are non-negotiables for great teams. That's why, Perk, I say, I don't feel so good about them in the first 2 rounds. The only thing that makes me feel good is that at certain times they will have two of the better players on the floor. But what we have seen from Dame is, it's been an up and down season for him, and especially being out at this point.
Thin at guard.
Exactly. It's been hard because, he needs that rhythm to go in. But we all know they count on him in the postseason. They count on Giannis during the regular season. It just has not been on the same timelines for me to feel good about what they've done when they can't do the basics.
Do they need to get better consistently, like for us being more consistent? Yes, but let's not act like the Milwaukee Bucks haven't had signature wins since being under Doc Rivers.
Sure.
The defending champs, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they have a nice list of teams that they beaten and shown that they have a level that they can rise to. And we're not talking about a young group in this locker room. We're talking about a veteran group, and the core of that group actually won the championship without the exception of Drew Holiday. So
that's a big exception.
Yeah, but you replaced them with Dame. But what I'm saying with Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, and Giannis, once you completed the mission, I'm a strong believer that it is an on and off switch.
I just think.
NBA,